Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton here with Brandon. A lot to talk about. For the first time in a long time, a lot of news kind of all broke at once within English Weiss Schwarz. Let's talk about it. And we're going to start by talking about something that is not English Weiss Schwarz related. That is the JP announcement stream from a week ago. There have been other content creators talking about the stream in the ways that it affects JP. So we will just link to those in the description because we don't really play JP. We want to talk about the way that it could affect the English game. And Brandon, there were only a couple of ways really that we saw that the JP live stream could affect what we eventually get in English.
Yeah, and realistically looking at a lot of stuff that came out, it was really, intentionally for JP. We recognize that. So look, we were specifically scouring for things that could come to English. And we did think we found a couple. One of those obviously being Bang Dream.
Bushiroad owns Bang Dream. They tend to print Bang Dream in English. I anticipate that new Bang Dream stuff will find its way into English at some point. I would project that release as very late 2021, maybe even into 2022. It's not coming for a while, but I anticipate more Bang Dream support in English. But I think the thing that we've both been thinking about the most from that stream as far as it concerns English is Data Bullet did get announced. Data Bullet, a spin-off of Data Live, very Kurumi focused, and they've already announced that DAB will be playable with DAL, Brandon.
That's from what they've been saying, that it's standard. From that, though, we'll question to see whether or not it is trait aligned. Data Bullet kind of comes a little bit before the idea of the date traits from Data Live, so we shall see.
I would assume that at least the Kurumi stuff would play nicely with Data Live in English, but beyond that, I don't know anything about the show.
It's also an extra booster, so
it's designed to be playable with Data Live. I'm glad that it's only an extra booster, but to be fair, this is the one set that didn't need a shot in the arm. Data Bullet has been announced for May 14th for its JP release, and that the trend for new releases in JP that have immediately come out in English is that there's usually a 6-month delay, and given that the schedule up until November-ish is basically spoken for, I would assume that November is a likely release date for Data Bullet, assuming that it gets announced, which again, it's a booster, it makes sense for it to get announced. Data Live has been flying off the shelves. People have been buying it. It would make a lot of sense for Bushiroad to print a product that they know will sell. Expect Data Bullet in November, which means Data Bullet for Worlds at the start of 2022. Our first World Tournament back to having World Championships will probably have Data Bullet available to it. And that's important.
That's terrifying to think about.
It is. Especially considering that Data Live is considered to be a strong set already, probably the strongest set in English on release. For it to be getting a shot in the arm to make it even stronger heading into Worlds, that's unreal. And that's the impression that we got from the meta survey that Wild Wild Weiss did a few weeks back. Thanks to Kevin from Wild Wild Weiss for doing this. Basically, he sent a survey out to 30 people in the Weiss community, excellent players as well as content creators. He also asked us to participate, which was very nice of him. And the community at large came up with this link in the description to his video. You should watch it. It's very good. The overwhelming consensus is that Data Live is going to be the strongest set in the meta when it comes out.
Data Live is going to be strong. Realistically, the community says no questions that it will be. In fact, if you actually go through the video and kind of see where the rankings are with that, we'll see that Data Live is in almost a category in itself above the rest.
Yeah, Data Live on release. I'm not one for S tiers. Maybe it's just because of my background as a person who works in education, but if there's an S tier, though, Data Live is the only thing in S tier. And then everything else is trying to play catch up.
But yeah, but be sure to check out the video as well to kind of see what other sets are also in those top tiers as well. Just kind of get an idea of what some of the player base thinks are relevant meta sets.
Yeah, there are definitely some highlights that are worth talking about. I think not a whole lot of surprise as to what is kind of in that next tier down. Fate, both the old package, the 8-bar, as well as the new stuff from Heaven's Feel in that next tier, as well as Konosuba and Slime. We talked about this when we did our kind of meta preview video back a couple of weeks ago. And by and large, the community agrees with most of what we had to say there. Like most of the decks that we talked about as being potentially relevant, they're the ones that filled out the top 5, ReZero, with Frozen Bonds being the highest rated deck at the next tier. I'm interested to see what happens to Attack on Titan. It got hit really hard in this ranking, and it fell all the way into the 60s, being ranked 13th out of this list after being, the boogeyman of the meta for so long. It'll be interesting to see what people do with AOT. It's very dependent on an on-reverse combo and on an Obero effect, both of which do not play well into Data Live because of its removal and its standby heavy build. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to Attack on Titan long term. Watch the whole video. There's a lot of interesting stuff there about what people think is and isn't good and why. But overall, probably going to be a Data Live heavy meta, and the release of Data Bullet is probably not going to help that. However, as we've said before, the meta long term isn't determined by polls and by individual conversations between players. It's about the games, it's about the tournaments, and Brandon, we have tournaments.
We have stuff coming up. If we look into what's coming out, they've announced for the idea of SpringFest 2021, we have shop leagues. We have 2 shop league seasons coming up, both in March and April, as well as May through June. So those 2 seasons are going to be on the shop level. The first shop league coming up for March, April does include, for the winner, a fun Kurumi card, which is expected to be as a part of the meta decks. So being able to get a stamped card for your meta deck Data Live would be fun. There's also there'll be some Magia record PRs as well as some Grand Order PRs throughout. A lot of cool prizes to be won, as well as a dice bag.
Yeah, the dice bag is also just a participation prize.
Yeah, everybody with 2 points on the leadership board and above. So as long as you participate twice in the shop league, then you will be able to earn a dice bag from season 1.
And that's so interesting because back, I think it was like a month ago now when we did that video on what makes Weiss a great game, one of the things that we said was, you don't need anything else. You don't need any dice or markers or anything like that. And then Bushiroad's like, here, a dice bag. But it actually is pretty cool. I'm kind of excited to get a Bushiroad dice bag. That'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that. Shop League's going to be great. But of course, we have buried the lead here, because the biggest announcement from Bushiroad about SpringFest 2021 is the announcement of online competition for SpringFest.
Yes.
We don't know what it looks like. We don't know if it's a full-on regional. We don't know if it's trios. We don't know if it's singles. We do not know. All we know is that on the remote fight server, there will be high-level SpringFest competition.
So, yeah, they've announced it on their website as well, but they have not put out content or information regarding that yet. Part of that, we believe, will be information that will be released at a later date.
Link to that in the description so that when it does get updated, you can see it, as well as to the Shop League stuff, including prizes, the whole prize list. Obviously, things were very strange last year. Hopefully this year we can return to something that looks a little bit more normal. And it starts with having a set Bushiroad schedule for the first half of the year, which is super nice.
One of those places where we may find that information updated is probably going to be during Weiss Week. They have announced on their website during February 22nd through February 28th that is going to be Weiss Schwarz Week, where they're going to update for probably new title announcements. Probably talking about the Bushiroad Remote Fight event, as well as other prizes and whatnot.
They advertise it as exciting events, new title announcements, and attractive prizes to be won. So they're going to be doing this ostensibly, it appears to be through their website. I imagine we'll get more updates on what that looks like as we get closer. But yeah, there will be updates for the game itself. They're also advertising campaigns, which, whatever that means, and a survey, whatever that means. More information coming soon for all of those. Link to that in the description as well. But we're getting some kind of special English-specific Weiss Week. This is English-specific. It's on the English website. So this is not a JP thing that we have to translate into, how does this affect us? This is an English-specific Weiss update event, essentially. And it's going to last all week long in the third week of February. We'll have a Clock Talk right in the middle of that on the 23rd, which, great timing. But in any case, there will be announcements, and as we get closer, I imagine we'll have more to say about what might be included. Obviously, I think the big thing is that during that week, we'll probably know more about the specifics of SpringFest at a regional level, as well as getting the title announcements for the rest of the year.
Probably the rest of the year, because at this point, we have not got a title announcement since November.
Yeah.
We're probably going to get quite a few at this point, especially being a month away.
Yeah. The most recent announcement was Beaufry, I think, for May, right?
Yes, Beaufry has been announced with a date. That is going to be on May 21st of 2021. But they have not included any additional title announcements since the announcements of Beaufry, Kaguya, and Fate. So with Beaufry now having a date and the timing of the week of Weiss Schwarz week, because realistically, Weiss Schwarz week, we get also Magia Record and ReZero. So those two will be coming out that week. With that, then we'll only have Date Alive, Magia Record Part 2, essentially. We'll have Beaufry, and then currently we do not have dates for Fate and Kaguya. Basically, once that comes out, they push out the next release date. That's what they have been doing. They haven't put out new title announcements. Yeah. So when we come to the next one, essentially we'll only have, at that point, 2 titles without dates. And it's typically timed out that next title would be getting that date about that weekend. So we're probably going to get the rest of the dates for ones we have announced and then some. It is also worth noting that at that point in time, Alicization should be out in JP, Part 2.
Once Beaufry drops in May, like you said, we only have Heaven's Feel 2 and Kaguya-sama that have been announced for English. They don't have dates. Bushiroad has indicated that they would like to do 2 English exclusives every year.
That's at least what they did last year. Last year was kind of like really the first time that happened.
Right. That's presumably a trend. I think that makes sense to expect again. But again, 2020, 2021 being what it is, we could see delays. But it seems to be that Bushiroad would like to drop 2 English exclusives every year. If they can hold to the June-December schedule. After Beaufry, we would get an English exclusive in June. So we would have an announcement, probably during Weiss Week, of a June English exclusive, dates for Heaven's Feel and Kaguya-sama, which would probably be July, August. Like you mentioned, Alicization 2 comes out in JP. 6 months later, it could come out in English. I anticipate that it would. Sword Art's a popular property. Alicization 1 exists. Same with Slime. Slime 2 has been announced. It will drop in JP in March. So it makes sense for that to come out in September in English. Because again, popular property, meta-relevant set. I anticipate Slime 2 and Alicization 2 in September and October. Potentially meta-relevant, depending on what gets released. We'll see what happens, but I think those 2 sets make the most sense for September, October. November, we talked about, we're looking at potentially Data Bullet. And then it starts to get a little bit speculative, right? Like, do we get another English exclusive in December? And where does Bang Dream fit into all this? Data Bullet's only an extra booster, right? So can the new Bang Dream stuff, which is also kind of a different kind of set, could that drop in November alongside Data Bullet? Does that drop in January 22? And what about World Trigger? Is that even a thing in English? So super speculative when we get down to the end of the year, but I think that we can pretty safely project the schedule into November-ish. I think that we're potentially looking at the announcement of what the 2 English exclusives that we think are going to happen in 2021 would be during Weiss Week.
Well, I think Weiss Week is also going to verify what we have speculated. It is going to say, hey, yeah, these are the ones that we speculate are coming out should be, yes, we're confirming those.
Yeah.
That's one of the big things I suspect will happen from Weiss Schwarz Week. I suspect it'll be very similar towards kind of that announcement stream, except over the course of a week.
This is a 7-day event. So between 2 English exclusives plus September, October, November, you could easily do a daily reveal of what sets are going to come out in 2021 and potentially even get into 2022 if you wanted.
You could, yeah, it would probably finish out the year, probably the second half of the year, if we're doing it that way.
Yeah, I would assume that Heaven's Feel and Kaguya-sama, because those are just date announcements as opposed to title announcements, those will probably be a little more low-key, just like, yeah, you know this is coming, here's the date. So, but anyway, that's all speculative. Point is, Weiss Schwarz Week, February 22nd through 28th on the Weiss Schwarz website. I anticipate they will also update through the Facebook page, so link to the website and their Facebook page in the description. Finally, Brandon.
Yes, Golden.
In a non-Bushiroad development.
Especially non-Bushiroad development.
As you know, quarantine forced us online, and, you know, we filled the gap with online locals via webcam, tabletop simulator, playing games on Untap, and those have been useful and good. But what we haven't really had is a lightweight browser Weiss client, so that you play Weiss games online without the need for cameras and physical cards in a way that is fast and efficient and works well. We haven't really had that. Untap got an update that introduced mobile, and it's not very Weiss specific. It's been running very slowly over the past several months, noticeably so. I think if you've been watching our streams, you've probably noticed that Untap is running honestly slower and slower. TTS requires a certain amount of technical capacity for someone's machine to run it. It is a bit of a bulkier program. It can be hard to just run it for older machines. So I am really excited about this new online Weiss client that has been developed called WeissFight.net, the Weiss Fight Network, and it's really, really good. I have been talking to the developer. They've put a lot of work into this. It's fast. It's lightweight. It has access to any deck list in Encore. Instead of having to choose individual cards, you create a list in Encore, and then you can import it directly into the client from there. The developer is continuing to, fix bugs as they pop up, things like that, continuing to make improvements. I'm very impressed by this, and I just think it's awesome. I'm really grateful for this program existing, and I wanted to shout out the developer. Thank you so much for making this. We are going to move all of our gameplay videos over to Weiss Fight as of right now because of how nice it is as a client. I would encourage you to try it, WeissFight.net. It's an excellent place to play games. I anticipate that with updates and improvements, it's only going to get better over time. It's fantastic, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be really interesting. Be able to use Encore decks to quickly build decks to be able to play test immediately. I think that's one of the big key features and key highlights for it, especially being a Weiss dedicated program. That's going to be the biggest selling point. Is because like you talked about before, Untap is it's a good sandbox, but it's really more designed and really better equipped to use for, say, Magic.
Yeah, it's designed for Magic and Pokemon, and it's not very Weiss friendly specifically. It's not bad, but it is really nice to have dedicated zones and buttons. It feels like playing on a really nice TTS mod, except it runs super fast. The animations are simple. It's not trying to look like a 3D play surface. It looks like someone incorporated one of the TTS mods into the 2D space of Untap and then sped it up and made it run much faster. It's very, very nice. It's so good. I have been very impressed by it. I'm looking forward to using it for a long time, and we wanted to shout out the developer. The admin's done a great job, so thank you so much for making this, and I hope that other people will jump on and use this. It's a great tool. It's a great way to play games with people in a space that doesn't require cards or cameras or a certain level of processing power.
That way you can spend all your money on buying cards. So yeah, looking forward to that. Next week is deck profile week, so Colton's deck.
Yes. Next week is going to be the last Konosuba deck, I promise. Next week is going to be the deck that I am going to be using when I play Konosuba at the highest level. Next week, no memes, no jokey stuff. This is the deck that I am going to take because I think it is the best possible Konosuba deck. But I've been playing hundreds of hours of Konosuba, and I've come to some conclusions. Those conclusions next week on my last Konosuba deck profile of this release cycle, I promise. And we will play the gameplay for that deck on weissfight.net.
So we're looking forward to that.
So before that Konosuba deck, on Thursday we will do our last Fate Grand Order 5 cards 5 minutes. We'll talk about uncommons, commons, and everything else. So be sure to check that out. After next week's final Konosuba deck profile, we'll be back with another Clock Talk in 2 weeks. Hopefully with some updates about Weiss Week. And then it will be into February. It'll be time to talk about Frozen Bonds. Should be a lot of fun. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining us, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.